Hello, my beautiful light beings. This is the Magic Exists podcast with Dani Margeaux. This is a podcast for anyone on their personal development or spiritual awakening journey who is transitioning from third dimensional living to fifth dimensional being. We talk about all things magical, mystical, spiritual, galactic, cosmic, inspirational, and so much more. I believe magic exists everywhere, and it's about shifting your perspective to see it all around you. All right, so today on the Magic Exists podcast, we have my best friend, Chelsea Jenkins. She is a natural born psychic and energetic healer that specializes in both timelines and predictions, as well as human design. Her belief is that life is for love, and she carries that into her work by helping clients recognize the innate gifts. Welcome and happy to have you here today as Magic Exists' first guest.
This is so exciting. Thanks, Dee. I'm so happy to be here. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this. I was like, this is going to be so fun. It's just sitting down with my best friend and having conversations that we always have when we're together, but now we just get to bring it to other people and let them into our little friendship circle. So yeah.
I know, it's so fun. I feel like we've had so many of these combos that we're like, oh, we want to put this out, and finally we're going to start doing it, and it's so beautiful.
It's perfect because you're the fire starter always. So I'm like, thanks for making that happen. My little manifesting generator.
The first of many. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is your strongest clair? How does that manifest for you in daily life and in readings?
Yeah, so I grew up with a psychic mom, and so I've been introduced to this world at a very young age, and I really always thought that that was her gift. I thought it was just something that she had, and I would look outward and constantly go to her for advice and guidance when I was growing up. And I would get these intuitive pulls and these intuitive pings, and I think deep down, it's like I think that's so cool, and I wish I had that gift, but I didn't believe it in myself. And as years went on and I grew up and I got older, I started noticing that maybe there wasn't such a difference between her gifts and mine. It was just more so the refinement. But when I left home and I went to college, I didn't really feel like I had a community to explore that with. And that it felt just very raw. Like if I were to come out with that and say I have these abilities and I have this intuition, it would be just, the focal point of bullying or outcasting or anything. And what I really wanted at the time was community. And I mean, that's what I met you was in college, was when I was really calling in that divine feminine, that cohort of women that would support me. And when we all got together as a friend group, I started really feeling that sense of community. Although our friends weren't really in this spiritually inclined space yet, we were very much living in a 3D, and it was fun. It was great. I loved it. But I didn't feel like I really had anybody to speak to except for my mom and maybe my sisters. So years went on, and I think I had kind of suppressed it because I was so focused on wanting to have connection with people, wanting to connect with humans. I'm a starseed. Now that I've learned about myself, I'm like so much a starseed that I'm like, this makes so much sense, that I was so focused on wanting these human connections and I was so fascinated by humans. I still am. I love people so, 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 so much. And so, sorry, this is a long answer. I'm long-winded, but basically what it came down to was that suppression kind of started bottling up in me. And I think when you are an intuitive person, which I believe every single person is intuitive, I actually believe every single person is psychic. I'll get into that later, but
Me too.
yeah, right. It's just it's something that it's like exercising a gift. I think it starts with mindfulness, and then it becomes intuition, and then it grows into psychicism once you really gain that trust in yourself and your guides and the divine that's guiding you. And so I had suppressed it for so long, but I kept getting pulled into little things that were much of this space, like yoga or eating healthy, or I went on an ayahuasca retreat. Like I was going to Burning Man. Like I was doing these things. I was experiencing with psychedelics early on, like all for the point of really getting to know myself deeper, not for trying to numb myself. And eventually it started coming to surface that I have these abilities, I have these gifts. And I mean, I don't know if you want to get into the story of
Well,
my aunt, but basically, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
I love that you're bringing that up because we always talk about, you're like, I'm a naturally born psychic because you have these downloads. And I want to share to our listeners that for me it was a really strong gut intuition. So I never thought that was psychic. I just always deeply knew things, and it was always about me or maybe other people's energy. I knew that person wasn't someone I should mess around with, but I never connected it. until now that I'm doing readings, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's actually like my main psychic gift is like the claircognizance.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna let you start with this beautiful opening because we kind of paralleled our, I guess, intention to do this as our life purpose kind of simultaneously. We kind of both awakened separately, but then together, and it was so cool because we were taking classes at the same time, and then it was cool to be able to reflect on you, who I respect and was inspired by so much, who like have been doing this, for 20 plus years, or in at least for yourself. And yeah, so one day I had already been doing Reiki for about a year. So I knew how to hold space. I knew that like if people didn't go to the light, you just send them, love, and you hold space. Like I knew that, but I hadn't opened the records yet. And you were having these pings of like mediumship come through.
Yeah. So we were simultaneously, I guess we could like cut to a few years, right? So I I've in 20, let's see, 2018, 2019, my aunt passed away, and my aunt was through marriage. I wasn't very close with her. Her and my uncle kind of went off and did their own thing once they got married and had their own lives. And when she passed away, it was sad. I felt awful for my uncle, but we didn't have that strong connection. And so it was very interesting because about 6 months after she passed, I started waking up in the middle of the night from hearing my name loud and clear. Also, by the way, it's happening again. And I'm like, oh gosh, what, somebody who's trying to connect with me this time. Just in like the last couple of weeks, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. So I was, for about 6 months after my aunt passed, I started waking up in the middle of the night because I would hear my name being called. And it was the most bizarre experience because it was always when I was sleeping alone. So I wasn't with my fiance. I was just with my dog, and he obviously doesn't speak English, even though I wish he did. And would wake up and I'd be kind of a little bit freaked out, but then I never really was too concerned. As bizarre as that sounds, I would also wake up to the smell of cigarette smoke, really strong smell of cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. My neighbors didn't smoke. My fiance didn't smoke. Like it was just a weird thing. And so I didn't think much of it, but it started happening. And about 9 months later, I finally said something to my mom. I was like, it's kind of weird. I've been waking up recently to the smell of the cigarette smoke, and it's been going on since September. I can't figure out what's happening. And I was like, but I think it might be our aunt. I think Darlene might be trying to get through to me. And my mom was like, well, why wouldn't she want to get through to me? And I was like, I don't know. Like maybe because like whatever. I have no idea. So come to find out that I was right, because on 4th of July, you and I, Dee, we were talking. I was having a conversation with you. It was just the two of us. What was so funny is we were at this party and we actually stepped out into a different room to have a private conversation one-on-one. And in the middle of the conversation, I want to hear your side of the story after this, by the way, because my side of the story is we were talking,
And that's so
and
different.
like in hindsight, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not how it went. So on my side of the story, we were talking, and then mid conversation, I felt this energy up to my right, which would have been up to your left. And I just stopped talking and I looked and I had a full conversation out loud that I thought you were hearing, saying, Darlene, what do you want? It's been almost a year. I know that you've been visiting me. Like, why are you still here? You passed on. Like, you need to go into the light. And I heard loud as, like, clear as day. She was like, I feel guilty. And I said, why do you feel guilty? And she said, because of Sharon, which is her daughter. And I was like, I just had this moment when I realized like she'd been staying around because she had this unresolved heartache, essentially. And I looked at
Wow.
her and I was like, we have all forgiven you. We love you. You did your best. Sharon had her own journey and her own path to walk, and it's time for you to move into the light. Like, it's okay. And it was the most crazy phenomenon I've ever experienced, because I just remember standing there right in front of you, but like it was like everything disappeared. I felt this whoosh of light go from the bottom of my feet up through my body, out through my crown, up into the sky. And it was this combination of the most beautiful, profound, divine white light that I went blind, literally. Like, it was so bright and beautiful. But I also had this, like, the human in me came back pretty quickly, and I just started bawling. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was on the bathroom floor having one of those moments, but it wasn't over a boy. It was because I was like, I just had an awakening. I can't go back anymore. Like, God is saying, you don't get to shy away from this gift. Like, you have this, and it's time to show up and get online, and there's no going back. So it was this like 3-part experience where at number one, I was like, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. Number two was, there's no going back from this. Like, you were moving forward, and you were online, and you're going to have to figure this out because this is your purpose. And then the third was, nobody's going to believe you. You're at a party, it's late at night, and this isn't real. But then I called my uncle the next day, and he confirmed. He goes, Chelsea, it's so weird because I've been feeling her so strongly in my space for the last year. There's been times I wondered if I even like moved that coffee cup or if it was her. In this last week, I've been feeling less of her. And this morning, he goes, it's just, it doesn't surprise me that you called me today, because this morning I woke up and I said, she's gone. And I was able to walk him through. I was like, you know, it was actually around 11:11, which is crazy. I don't know if you knew that, but like, I remember,
No.
yeah. I remember looking at the time because I thought I needed to tell my uncle, like, I need to give him this piece. And
Yeah.
it was just it was a wild, wild journey. But I want to hear your
Yeah.
side because
It's so wild because now that's been, I guess, 5 years ago. Is that? Oh, no, no. This happened
wait,
2021 or 2022 that this happened. 2021, maybe.
yeah, it's been a while. I can't remember
It's,
either.
yeah. So I just remember going into the room with you and it was just you and me. And then you started getting a download and it's like, you got this face. And it's like, you just know, I'm like, okay, something's coming through. And I felt like you kind of knew, like you were kind of like, I think Darla's coming to me. You had already like had her come see you in dreams and you were kind of like, I think that she's coming through. And I think like I had this like realization that I was like, I need to hold this space for you, this light. Cause there was like maybe 10, 20 people in the next room. And it felt like this was really important. So I just like I did a little Reiki bubble around us and I remember just being like, okay, I'm gonna like hold this space, whatever is like meant to happen. And it felt like it just felt right. Like I didn't know what you were kind of doing, but I knew it was right. I wasn't gonna be like, oh, stop, don't do that, or what are you doing? Or it was just like I trusted you, I trusted me, and like the work or whatever was happening. But like you were saying, you were having full conversations with her. That was not happening at all. You just kept looking to, yeah, it was your right because it was my left, and you just kept looking up. And then you would like cry a little bit, and then you would start again and like look up and then cry. And so I knew like there was some exchange going on in a different dimension. It was just at that point too, I had already been doing Reiki for a year. So I was already kind of like, oh, this is normal. This is good. Like, I think we both already trusted like that energy of like the work, the medium psychic work. But yeah. And then when you told me after, I just felt like, yeah, you like helped her to the light. Like she was stuck here because of guilt. And then she saw the light. And what I love about out of bodies or like the stories when people like kind of go out of body and they're like, all I saw was light and love and it was bright. And it's like that connection you make to when we channel is like that's a connection I've made of that just like oneness and wholeness, and it's just so beautiful.
And it feels so appropriate that it was you that was holding the space for me. I just feel like the timelines, and I feel like we have such a karmic connection, and we're soul family for sure. And for you to just, I feel like with you and I, it's just like back and forth, and of one of us is learning something new while the other one's holding space, and like kind of, but it's like a quick bounce. It's literally like a bouncy ball. Like we've got like this stamina that's going back, but it's so fun to be able to have a friend that can hold space for something that profound. And for me to be like, I don't think I could have done it unless it was you or my mom, probably, that would have like really been able to make me feel safe to be able to even go there too, you know?
Yeah. And I love too, because after that, you're like, okay, I need to reach out to someone. And so this is our mutual mentor, Nikki Novo. And it's interesting because actually, I remember it was like July 4th or something that happened. I had already signed up for my Akashic records, but I think I had maybe had one class or not, or hadn't yet. And then you ended up signing up with Nikki that same time. So it was cool because we had two different teachers, like kind of having a different perspective. So like it was really cool those 6 months. Like I'm learning this, like, are you feeling that? And it was like so cool to like bounce ideas off each other.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And like for anybody that is listening that's newer to this work or is coming online or waking up, and like I just want to like Dee and I both hold space for you because it can feel like a lot. Like I remember feeling like the reason I suppressed it for so long is because I almost felt like it was a little bit of a burden, if I'm going to be totally transparent. It felt like You asked me earlier, what's my strongest clair? What was first? And for the longest time, I would have said clairvoyant, but I really feel like I'm clairsentient, the strongest. And I actually, even before this call went on, just to like do a quick Google search, because I'm like, I know what they all mean. I know clairvoyance means that you can predict things in the future and you understand timelines. Or you can actually locate objects that are lost, like you kind of have an idea
Mm-hmm.
of where they're at. Clairsentient is really like take an empath and put it on steroids. It's this inner knowing. It's this it's not an inner knowing is claircognizance, but clairsentient is this inner feeling. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that my design, like this is where human design plays into this too, learning my design has been really helpful. I'm a projector, and I was like, oh, that's just more validation that like I can really see into people's souls. So between my natal chart in astrology and then my human design chart, and then with my upbringing, I'm like, man, like it's all becoming so clear, like why I'm here, why I'm on the path I am. And I think that it becomes more exciting, but in the beginning it can feel really daunting and overwhelming. And it's probably more so that way if you don't know how to work with your gifts. It feels like your gifts maybe are working overtime on you, and that can be really taxing. Because I know you and I are the same, D. I mean, like, remember when we were really coming online, like we couldn't turn it off.
Yeah, and I would go into like stores and be like getting messages, and it's like I don't need to be doing this like midday.
In the beginning, it was kind of fun. It was like, oh, I have this like
That's
magic
true.
trick. Like, let me do this. And then it starts getting really exhausting. And you're like, can I just go shopping without hearing what this person's like or feeling what this person's feeling? So,
I
yeah.
think there's a sense of over responsibility too, at least for me. Like in the beginning, like you were, I feel like a lot of people had that respect and like inspiration for you because you were like a naturally born psychic. And I feel like the things that would come up when you were just talking, like it would just be coming from you, but you would obviously be channeling.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, I feel like not until maybe this year, people, at least in my world, like obviously other people who see me, they're like, oh, they book me for readings and they respect like the trait. But people who've known me forever, it's very hard to see me shift into a different identity, a different version of me. And so it's like now that I've been doing this work for so long, they're like, oh, okay, like I get it. Like, but now with that comes like, oh, can you actually help me with this? Can you give me this healing? Can you give me this reading? What do you think this means? And it's like, yes, I want to support you in these beautiful ways, but I also know that I am doing this as a business. I am a third dimensional being living in the fifth dimensional space, and in all
Yeah.
between. But there is like boundaries that do need to be created for your own self-care and your own
Yeah.
livelihood.
Okay, a couple things on that. I feel like I'm like that as far as like the gifts go, I'm like the silver spoon kid because I got lucky and like coming through with the veil being very thin. And I have so much respect for you, and I have so much respect for people like Nikki Novo or others who didn't know that they were intuitive and then decided one day that they were going to go deeper and see what would happen if they showed up every day and they had a commitment to their practice. And the next thing you know, there you are. It's like what we were saying earlier. It starts with mindfulness, and then you build your intuition once you start seeing like how things are playing out, these patterns that are coming in, into play. And then your intuition, you start building that trust, and that takes the practice. And so like I just always love and respect your story because I'm just like, how cool is that like if we were to really look at 10 years ago, you were such a different person. I mean, you were always the best person, but like it's just so cool to see the evolution. And then the other piece to that too is, yeah, like we're not magic 8 balls that walk around and just like you can shake us and get an answer, like we definitely have a business, and the business is rooted in real pure intention to help the collective and raise the collective consciousness. But it's also more like I like want to piggyback off that because I feel like the people who reach out, I love working with my clients more than anything, but I love working with clients who really know that they are their own healers and want to learn the tools to become their own healers. I don't really have a desire to work with people for like years on end. I don't think that that's what I'm here for. I think that, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're here to help facilitate growth that is naturally within you. So these gifts that you innately have that are your birthright. They're just in there, whether you need to be somebody like me who has to look at their astrology and then has to look at their human design to get that validation and feel confident enough to move forward. Or if you're somebody that's like, I just have this inkling in my gut, like you, that you're like, something's there and I'm just gonna go and pursue it. That's what I want, is I just want everyone to realize that they are their own healers, and like that's all we're here for.
Absolutely. And that's what I've been loving about like infusing my coaching with like the records. Cause then it's like, okay, this is what you see in the records. And then now these are the tools. And we'll talk about human design for you, because that's kind of like what you're moving into. How can you, as a human, use resources that are helpful with spiritual guidance to get to where you want to go? And it's just been powerful, powerful divine work.
I know, it's really cool to see like how gosh, your guides are like with you every day. They're just like, hey girl, like here's the new healing, here's the new like meditation, or like you got to do this. And I think that's so cool, because I do work differently. I don't necessarily well, I I didn't grow up like in organized religion at all, but the first spirit guide that ever came to me was Jesus. And then the second was Siddhartha. And then the third was Buddha. And I was like, this is an interesting thing. And so I'm like, I'm working with a lot of ascended masters. And I've been tuning in recently, and not many have been coming through, but which is fine for me. I'll just kind of go and do my own meditation. But this morning I was like half asleep, half awake, and I woke up and I knew that we were going to be talking today. So from when I know that I'm going to be online and I'm going to be working with people, I try from the moment that I'm conscious, like in this state, to just drop in and be in that wavelength connected to the divine. And half awake, half asleep, and Jesus came through, and I was like, oh, hi, you're with me today. Okay, cool. But yeah, for me, it's not like an everyday thing like it is for you. So I think that's so cool that you get to have that relationship with them.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because for me, when I first learned about the records, there was this like deep knowing, like I need to be in the records like all the time. And I was doing this really
Rigorous.
rigorous self-practice. And with that, like when after 6 months or something, I think during a reading, someone was like, you have been in the records for many lifetimes, and like you're in it and out of it all day long. And it makes sense because in my past, I would always like daydream. I would always see timelines and past lives, but I didn't know that's what I was seeing. I thought I was just like making stuff up. So that's like, I know. So I want to talk about in readings, because that for me, I make the intention and I enter the records, and then I'll bring energy reading, or I'll bring like other of these modalities into the records, and because I like to work at it from that dimension. And so when the guides come through, I'll ask them and I'll talk to them, where do I want to be guided, within what do they need today? And I do it all up there because that's like my superpower. How does that come through for you for guides? Because I know sometimes you do go into the Akashic records, and then oftentimes you just like read energy.
Yeah. So when I'm sitting down for a reading, I always call the person's higher self in first, and I'll ask them what they want me to know. And I'll ask them to guide me. And so sometimes I will go up to the records if there's something that we need to see. Typically, if it's with like a past life or a karmic connection, like a soul contract that they have with a person, I'm like, oh, I need to know, is this a past life, or is this something that I need to know? Like, we'll discover that. Otherwise, though, I go into their energy, and their aura usually comes through first. I see which guides come through. I see if any of them have anything to say. Some people, there's not anybody that wants to talk, and then some people come in with an entire parade, and I'm like, one person at a time, folks. But what I really like going to the records for too is when there's a big life decision, I like to go sit with their council, and I like to go talk to their higher council and say, what are you guys debating right now? How can I listen in? It's kind of like going to a city hall meeting in a way, but it's
Yes.
a much smaller, experience, more intimate. And I like to hear where their brain is at and what's going on, because even if they don't have a message for me, at least knowing what they're discussing is helpful usually to the client to say, because a lot of times I think people come to us when they're in that middle ground. They're not like, they're waiting for change, or they're desiring change. A lot of times that change is happening, but we're just impatient because we're humans, and we're like, is it happening, and can we trust? And so
And they
when
just
you
want to
get
be like validated.
totally, yeah, I say that a good reading is either going to be extremely validating of what you already know. It's going to be confirmation, which is really important for you and your own, like for the client's own spiritual development, because that just proves that they are on their path and they're paying attention to their own intuition and they're being divinely guided, even to just go sit in that reading. Or it's they are getting information that they were being blocked from. And healers need healers. Everybody needs that insight sometimes. And so for me, in my readings, I actually specialize in timelines and predictions. And so that's something that's just always naturally come really easily to me. And it's almost like I can, when somebody presents something like we want to have a baby, I will kind of just be like, like from where we're at, like right now in time, we're in September, and I'll be like, February, it's gonna be in February. And I'll like feel into that, and I'm like, uh-huh. And then I can connect with the soul, like and like usually then I can look at the person and be like, I see that soul baby. And yeah, it's just an interesting thing. So, or when am I gonna move? And I'll like see the house, and I'm like, oh, I think it's gonna be like this, and yeah, but we all have free will. It changes, but so far I've been pretty good and on point with it.
Yeah, and I can verify that several times.
Yeah.
She's been spot on these. I want to talk a little bit about human design and how you're kind of moving from like the psychic readings into human design. Because so I'm a manifesting generator and you're a projector, and I feel like we feed energy off of each other really well, but also we work very differently. And so as well as like how our gifts manifest in different ways. And so a little bit of why, yeah, you're transitioning and how it can help you.
Yeah, so I love doing psychic readings. I really do, but I just felt like there needed to be, I don't know, I was feeling this call for more. I wanted to give my clients kind of a tangible map or blueprint or something they could look at. Like I remember looking at some of our friends and being like, oh, you're so good at astrology, and you could give them a natal chart. They can look at that and there's something to back it up. And when I found human design, first of all, for me and my own story, like my own journey, it was just so liberating. It was the first piece, or it was the first modality that I found that I was like, oh my gosh, I am blown away. I've never found something that's been a bigger permission slip, because it speaks to not only your conscious design, but it speaks to your unconscious design. So there's a part of you that within you has always known certain things to be true, or has always thought a certain way, whether that be on the shadow side, or it's a part of you that maybe you're not comfortable enough to share with the world because it feels like it might be like narcissistic or braggy or whatever. It's one of your strengths. To find out all that on your unconscious side is like such a relief. And then even just to find out, so in human design, you have your big, kind of like in astrology, you have your big three. So you have your energy type, and you have your authority, and you have your profile lines. So your energy type is like D is a manifesting generator. I'm a projector. Then there's also manifester, there's generator, and there's reflector. And then you have your profile lines. D, you are a 2-5, I think, right? I'm a 6-2. The first number is representative of your conscious design. So it's your first profile line, and that tells you about how the world perceives you and how you kind of are outwardly. And then your unconscious is the second number, and that number is kind of more of your internal world, and it's what's going on below the surface inside. And they work together to kind of create their own little framework of what your kind of your costume is as you move through the world. So there could be another manifesting generator friend of ours, but they might be a 1-3 or a 2 or 4-6 or something else. And so they're going to move through the world differently than you would be. And same thing with projector. And then the last thing is authority. And authority is your decision-making process. And I'm an emotional authority. D, you're an emotional authority. That means that we can't make decisions unless we're in a neutral state. So it's really giving ourselves the permission and the grace to wait to be in that place where we've gone through the highs and we've gone through the lows, and now we're neutral and we can make that decision. So just wanted to give like a little brief overview of what that is. And if anybody listening wants to go find out what their human design is, go to mybodygraph.com or myhumandesign.com, and you can pull up, you'll need your birthday, your time of birth, and the place that you're born. So that's just like a little like housekeeping on what that is. So the reason that I wanted to bring it into my readings is because when I pulled up my body graph, I was like, this is really cool looking. I don't know what it means because it's super overwhelming. It has 9 energy centers instead of 7. So the Hindu chakra system has 7, and the body graph, which is human design, has 9. And I was really fascinated by that, because in studying the chakra system, I actually always kind of felt like there were, okay, so like our solar plexus and our heart are so close together, but like I feel, I don't know. There was always something that I felt like was maybe in between or like in between. And do you've studied this, right? There are chakras in between, aren't there? Or,
There's like hundreds of chakras. There's secondary chakras and primary chakras, but what we believe as the primary are on the main meridian. And so, I mean, there's chakras on our fingertips, there's chakras on our hands. We just like don't have names for like all of them.
okay, so that's what I thought. And I always was always intuitively feeling that as I was studying that, because whenever I'd read people's energies, I was kind of seeing that. And so when I saw my human design body graph, I was like, oh, this makes sense. These are the places in which they were kind of sectioned off. And so I started bringing human design in because A, I thought that it was a good way to kind of give a tangible thing for my clients to look at. But B, it's a modality that consists of 7 ancient modalities put together. I don't, maybe it's not 7, but it's a multitude of ancient modalities. So there's so much history there and there's so much science there. And I mean, I could talk about it for forever, but we're not going to. The reason I brought it in is because it tells you your purpose right there. It's your incarnation cross is your purpose, or like your theme in life. It tells you about who you are, how you navigate the world. It tells you the best way to make decisions for yourself. It tells you the places that you are more prone to societal conditioning. So there's the different centers. If they're not colored in, you're more prone to societal conditioning. And when I learned that, I was like, oh gosh, so now I'm going to go on this journey of deconditioning, because I see how, for me, I have an undefined will center, which is your heart center, and an undefined sacral. That means that I've spent so much time really equating my worth to my productivity. And that has just led me to burnout, because I'm a projector. I'm not somebody that's supposed to be working 24/7 and getting caught in that hustle culture. But if you have an undefined will center, you learn that you are somebody who wants to get all the certificates to make sure that they can prove that they have, they have all the accreditation that they need, or you overproduce in your work because you want to show off to your boss and like feel worthy. There's a lot of worth stuff that goes on in your undefined will center, and discovering that and being able to release that and say, no, I am innately worthy. I have, my birthright is like, I am allowed to just be a worthy person, was really liberating. Learning how to be, yeah, like I could keep going on, but like learning that for me was like, okay, now I really feel like this is a roadmap. This is a literal blueprint to your soul that can help you kind of get to where you need to get to quicker. And again, that's a projector thing, because like projectors are all about efficiency, but I'm like, how can I do this the most efficient way possible? Like, let's do this and the quickest way possible. So yeah, when I also, so there's that piece. I want to give a roadmap. I want it to be easy. I want it to be accessible for my clients. The other piece of it was I was looking at it from my own business perspective. So as a spiritual entrepreneur, you are constantly expanding your energy, because you're not only learning to bring in more downloads and more information, you're also learning how to hold more and more and more space, and then also learning how to clean out that space regularly. So it's a lot that's going on. And I was recognizing that when I was doing back-to-back readings, I was exhausted, and I was like, this is not sustainable for me. And also, if I was in a place that day where, like, with my emotional authority, like I just wasn't, I was in a higher, I was in a low, it wasn't really the best time for me to be giving readings. So I really had to learn to fix my schedule to honor my energy and honor what would be best to serve my, how was best to serve my clients. And that was a part of the reason why I brought in human design also, because I think that I can look at somebody's body graph and I can use that clairsentience that I have and that claircognizance and really just kind of get an overall feeling of them and where they're at. And then when you combine that with the questions that they have about where they at, where they want to go, what lessons they need to hear, it's kind of just this like little cheat sheet for me to be able to really deliver messages. I'm still using my intuitive ability, but it just takes a little bit of that load off, so I can really, I can give even more.
And as a projector, I feel like your little one lines are like so powerful. Like they're like little mini explosions of wisdom. And like
Thank you.
yeah, and I just think it's so beautiful that like whatever modality you're attracted to, there is some like wisdom to help you get on track to find yourself back to like the essence of your being, which I think is the purpose of all this, is to like find your way back to who you are whatever conditioning we have, whether it be because of our soul contract or from how we were born or how we were raised, whatever that is, and we're able to like see like, yeah, I am different from other people and I'm okay with it. And it's like a lot of times the judgment comes in like, oh, I'm so different. I want to be like, why can't I work as much as them? Or why am I so tired? Like that was one big thing for me with my exes. They would sleep like 2 to 3 hours less than me. And I would always just wake up at that time because I just thought like, oh, well, I don't need to sleep this. But actually as a manifesting generator, and I'm sure other things, like I actually need like 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And so I get that, which is like really, so I wake up 2 hours after my partner, but I'm okay with that because I have so much energy. And it's
Totally.
really validating, to hear a reading like this where you're like, oh, wow, it's just actually how I'm made. And I'm not going to feel guilty if I need to take naps or.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Also, that comparison piece is huge too, especially because I was recognizing too that a lot of the mentors I was calling in and a lot of the people I was learning from a business perspective were all manifesting generators and generators. So manifesting generators and generators are the only two types that are self-sustaining energy types. So think of it as a battery. Those two people are like the Teslas, of or like they're the solar panels of the energy types. Like they're constantly being able to rejuvenate, whereas all the other energy types are getting energy from those people. It's not like you're like dead laying on the floor like with nothing, like you have nothing to give, but like you're definitely feeding off of that. And so I was recognizing that the way in which they navigated the world and their lives and their schedules, it just was not conducive to my overall well-being. Like I've leaned into a softness. There's a level of like femininity that I bring into my business. It doesn't mean like I'm not doing anything. It just means I'm really carving out those boundaries and saying like, if I'm in my luteal phase, like the last two, weeks of the month or whatever, I am being a lot more gentle about how much my productivity is, because I guarantee you that when I am back in my follicular and my ovulation, like I'm getting so much done. And as a projector, like that's something worth celebrating, is like we get to, because I had so much judgment towards myself. I would look at you, D, and I'd be like, how does she do it all? Like I'm exhausted thinking about it. And I think for years I did try to keep up to that pace, but it led me to literal burnout where I had adrenal fatigue and hormone imbalances, and not just with keeping up with my friends, but like working multiple jobs and, just being that overachiever because I thought I had to be. So it was like living out of alignment in my energy type, living out of alignment, or living in my deep, like unconditioned will center. It was just a lot that was going on. And so, and our bodies speak to us, so that's the beautiful part of human design that I really celebrate, is it's not cerebral, it's not intellectual, it's a giant experiment of embodiment. So you actually can feel the shift and the change on a cellular level. Like the first activation is learning your body graph. And then from there, it's, to me, I find it so addicting, and I'm like obviously so passionate. And so the deeper I go into it, the more resonance there is. And if anybody's interested in it too, you can go on you can look at your body graph and you can find out what you can go look at the gene keys too, because Richard Rudd is, even just reading that literature is a soul activation as well. Or a DNA activation. And so the two together have just been like wildly profound. And I'm excited to see where things are like 7 years from now, because even just changing the way that I make decisions, or saying, hey, today I am feeling like I'm tired, so I'm not going to do something, and I'm going to let myself, and then also celebrating when I am productive and being like, ooh, that was like, I got like a lot done, and getting that feedback from people too. It's like, I'm not the only one who recognizes that. It's really shifted a lot in my overall confidence, my overall productivity, my overall well-being. And I just want that for everybody. And like you said, D, it's kind of like find the modality that works for you and experiment with it, play with it, learn it, like embody it, just have fun with it, and then see where it leads you, because there's so much out there that we get to just explore.
Yeah, so many things. First off, the body. I feel like I've spoken a lot about this in previous podcasts, and you bring this up. It's like the way to your intuition is through the body, understanding your body, because our body is our subconscious. So if we want to bring it to the conscious and be aware of it, you got to tune into that. And so I haven't revealed this happened today, but as I've been going through my Reiki 1 course, It's been like an activation. I feel like I'm in a portal. And so the third grandmaster after Yusui, who's the one who like rediscovered this Reiki, her name is Mrs. Takata. And she came to me and like when you brought up the 7 years, like I wonder how it's going to be in 7 years. She was literally like, I called you forward to learn Reiki. And she's like, you are part of this like collective awakening of this Reiki. And she's like, 50% of the population is going to actually be practicing Reiki. And she's like, that is how like the new earth frequency is going to come about. And it's like all these modalities of like learning energy and connecting to God consciousness in their own way, in their own time without judgment is like really the key.
I love this so much. I got so excited because I'm like, I hope so. Like, I don't hope so. I know so. If that's what came to you, I'm like, I trust that fully. And yeah, I agree. It's like this past week, and we were talking about this. What I think is so beautiful about our friend group and what I really want to like continue to expand in the world, and I hope everybody can find their way to this, is celebrating each other's differences, like exactly what you just said, just celebrating each other's differences instead of comparing ourselves to each other, instead of judging ourselves for the way that somebody is and somebody isn't. Because I really feel like we're this unique fabric of life, and maybe we're part of, one of the motifs on the fabric, and somebody else is a part of a different one, somebody's a different color or a different shape or different something, but like we're all there together. We all serve a purpose, and together it's so beautiful. But when we start trying to move our way into a different part of that fabric or somewhere else that doesn't maybe feel right, but we've been told we're supposed to be because somebody out there was once told that too, and then it just kind of trickled down, it becomes really hard to stand in your own power and stand in your own strength. And then it's like all these messages. I think that's where things get really like loud and difficult, is like when we are ignoring it. I'm not saying like this work is always a challenge. It's always a freaking challenge. Like every single day it's a challenge, but it can be also really like really liberating too, you know?
I agree. And it's hard to say because I guess I've only been in this for like I guess 3 years, which is wild. Like, but every like as I create more mastery and as I go deeper, like I think I'm at the deepest, right? And then all of a sudden there's like deeper, and I feel like it's probably forever that this like we feel this way, in every kind of spiritual growth or personal development journey. And I kind
Yeah.
of want to touch on like what you said about friendship. So we've been friends since 2000 and I think like 13.
Yeah. I mean, we've known each other since 2018. We were roommates in 2012. Wait, hold on.
No, no, no. I graduated college 2011,
Yeah.
so before that. So okay, 2008 we met.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We met in 2008. Yeah. Oh, God. Sometimes I still think we're in our 20s. So I skip
Yeah,
a
no,
decade.
same.
Um, whoops. So we met in 2008, and then we lived with each other. We were roommates in 2011, 2010 to 11. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then we really became good friends though in 2014, 13.
2013 or 14,
Yeah,
yeah.
which is so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of love like so I met Chelsea in college, and a friend brought us to live together, and we were in the same sorority, and it's kind of cool because I feel like there's another girl, her name's Steph, she was like in our sorority too, and we kind of expanded where my friend from high school and then her friend from high school kind of joined and created this like group that we've been pretty close since I guess like 2024 or 2014, and it's so beautiful because we used to go on trips like every year together. We went to on this Peru trip, like with our moms, and it's really this like beautiful, I think, like kinship and like knowing. And it's like now that I like understand soul families and soul contracts, it's like I for sure without a doubt like all of us are meant to be friends and we're meant to connect in this way for like our highest good. And now it's just so fun to see like where we're going.
I want to share some like wisdom on that, I guess, or like some insight, because anybody that's listening that's like, oh, that's so nice, like I wish I had that community, I wish I had those relationships. I just want to give like a little bit of a backstory. I My first 2 years of college, I didn't have very good girlfriends. We were in a sorority, but I'd never been bullied in my life, and that was actually the first time I was like ever bullied. And I couldn't really understand it because I got along really, really well with the guys. And I loved hanging out with the guys because we would go do things. We didn't spend our time talking badly about other people. And I was finding that a lot of the girl friendships and the groups that were formed were they would get together and they would literally just talk about people. Like I remember walking into a room one time. I was like, I'm gonna try to make friends with all these people. Like I want to get to know these girls. And I walked in and they had like a map that they were making of like who had hooked up with who. And I was like, I just like don't care about
Oh
that
my
stuff.
gosh. No.
Yeah, right. Like
Same.
so
Yeah. There's like,
cringe.
what's the point?
Right. And whenever I would see you and Steph and Holly and that and your group of girls together, you guys were just always like lifting each other up, having so much fun. I was like, I want to be friends with those people. Like those are the girls that I want to call in my life. And this was, I think, around my second year that I started really seeing your guys' dynamic coming together. And I was like, that's what I want to call in because I love having guy friends. My guy friends to this day are still my best friends. But I was like, I'm a girl. Yeah, you need your girls. Like it's just like just plain and simple, right? So I remember really sitting with like, if I wanted to make good girlfriends, what would that look like? And I thought about, okay, well, if we had a house in Newport Beach, because we went to school at UC Irvine and Newport was about 20 minutes away. So it was really fun to live there. And I was like, if we could live on the peninsula and I could live with a group of girls, who do I want to live with? And I immediately thought of Steph. And I was like, and if she wants to bring Dee and Holly and that group that they had lived, like most of them had lived together the previous year, it's like I would love to be a part of that. Like I'll just like infiltrate the group by living with them. Like I'll have to be there all the time, which sounds creepy, but honestly, like we all got along really well.
No,
And
it's
so
amazing. I want you to bring up the story of like when this actually transpired and how
yeah.
divinely freaking guided this is.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like people misconstrue manifestation with like things just land in your lap. No, there's like intention and there's thought that goes into it. And so I had actually spent like 2 months really sitting on who would I want to live with? Where would we want to live? And I called around and I found this house with one of the girls that we knew that was moving out. She was graduating, so she was leaving. And I said, how many girls can fit in this house? What's the rate? Like all the things. And I did all the research. And then it was over the summer and I remember calling Steph and she was at your apartment.
Yeah.
And I said, Steph, what are you guys doing? She said, we're going to go to a party. Do you want to come over? And I said, yeah, I'll come over. So I go over there and I looked at her and I said, where are you living next year? And she goes, I don't know, but I'm going to be living with her roommate, Hazel. And I said, she had been living with Hazel all of college. And I said, okay. I said, well, I found a house in Newport. Would you guys want to move in with each other? And she was like, I mean, that sounds fun. And then she said, how many roommates do we need? And I said, there's 3 rooms and we could fit this many girls. We could fit 5 girls in there. And she said, okay, Dee, do you want to, she calls to you in the room. She goes, Dee, do you want to live in Newport next year? And you come out of the room. I'll never forget it. You're wearing shorts and these heels and the 7 were dying. And you're like, what? You're like, do you want to live in Newport next year? And you go, well, Kat and I are going to live together. And Kat's our other friend. And Kat was studying abroad in Italy at the time. You're like, Kat and I just signed a lease, but yeah, I mean, we'll break it. It's fine. And it was simple as that. So Dee comes out of the room and says they're going to break a lease that they had just signed with a roommate that was living in Italy. And then Steph is bringing along a roommate that I think I had met like once before. And that was that. That was the end of it. We moved into this house in Newport on 42nd Street. It was the best year of our lives.
The best year.
I mean, we became like best friends for life from that year. So what I want to say to anybody that's like, I don't have that is call it in, but get really clear about the kind of friendship. Look around, see what you like about the people, like certain groups that you maybe are like see what you like about certain groups. I really loved that these girls, Dee and Steph and Holly and Hazel and Kat, they all lifted each other up. They didn't get together and bond over talking shit about other people. They got together and they played sports, or they went out dancing, or they would help each other organize a cabinet. Like it was so many like little things, but they always had each other's backs. And I looked at that and I said, that's what I want to call in. And then over the years, even though we all are completely different people, we all have different interests. And I mean, Dee was playing basketball and Steph was in nursing. And I was like this hippie that was at music festivals all the time. Like we were always just doing our own things, but we always held space for those differences. And again, celebrated each other's differences. And it really has created a container of friendship that's just really uplifting and beautiful. And so, I could tell you like 17-year-old me, 18-year-old me would have never thought that I would have had it though, because I really was like, these girls in college are so mean to me. And the guys are the only ones that are nice. And like, how do I get that? And it was just just putting myself out there and manifesting. And it does take a little bit of work, but I really want to share that with anybody that's like, I'm calling in my community, I'm calling in my soul sisters, I'm calling in my soul family, like whatever that looks like for you.
I absolutely love that so much because I feel like a lot of people in the spiritual space, especially going through like a dark night of the soul or something, it's like this is a big thing that like they're outgrowing maybe their old friend groups or things aren't aligning anymore. And they're like wanting more of that deepness, that richness that this spiritual development journey does offer.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about like 10 years later, about manifestation and just how we moved in 5 houses from each other on the same block during the pandemic. And we'll make this quick, but just I want to share to you that like what you're saying, put an intention out there and anything is possible. And I think life is fun. It's meant to be fun. And so once you can remove the conditioning of like, I'm not meant to have too much fun, or I'm not meant to have joy, or like I need to work more, you know, it's actually like living in the joy. And so I'll preface this as I had a condo in Glendale and an ex-boyfriend was like, I'm moving to the beach. And I was like, I'm not okay with like doing long distance with you. Like we either move in together or, you know, whatever the case, we're not meant to be together. And he's like, no, I want you to move with me. Let's move to Manhattan Beach. Okay. We found a place. I didn't even look at it. We moved in. And then a year later, the pandemic's hitting and things are like not going well. And so literally that month, Chelsea comes in and is like, oh, there's a house. I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, I went on, I think like Craigslist, really, I don't even know, like it was so random. It was in 2020, and I had been visiting you every single Sunday for the year that you were living at the beach already. And I was like, I know I want to move back to the beach. We lived at the beach together in college, and I know that I want to move back here. And when the pandemic hit and we were going into lockdown, I said, well, where else would I want to be other than by the ocean? And so I was like, also, my best friend lives there. So maybe there just happens to be something. And I found somebody that was subletting his place for 6 months, and it was from May until November. And so that was like the perfect time to be at the beach. And so I was like, of course I would take a summer sublet and I'll move in right across or right up the street from D, literally on the same street. And so I did. And I ended up being able to take over that lease and stay there for another 2 years. And Dee ended up moving from the apartment that she was in originally to directly across the street. So we had like at one point there was like 3 different spaces on Gold Street in Manhattan, or in Manhattan Beach. But also before that too, I was at your house the day that I found my house that I bought, which was also 10 minutes from your house. And so it's funny because we do not, like, what I love about our friendship is we do not have a codependent relationship at all. We are very like autonomous and independent in what we do, but we love being in each other, like with each other.
Yeah, we just love love hanging out.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it was, I think it's been like, and we're at that point too now where we're both like, I'm engaged, you're on the precipice of getting engaged, hopefully sooner rather than later, because you're like really calling that in. But we're at that place now and we're like looking at buying houses again, and we're like, well, let's just be neighbors and have kids around the same time because that'll be fun.
Which is something we're manifesting, I think, 2026. We'll put that out there, guys.
We're putting it out there right now. We are manifesting 2026. We are neighbors and we get pregnant at the same time.
Yes, yeah. I love it. Chelsea, this was so amazing. Thank you for just sharing your beautiful wisdom and insight. And I think they're just such beautiful topics here. If there was one thing that maybe Spirit wanted this beautiful collective to hear, any last thoughts or words of guidance that you'd like to offer?
I keep getting, like, I just came in. I wasn't thinking about this before. It's a timeline thing, and that there's something in like in the next 2 months there's going to be a lot of like shifts and endings, but it's in a good way. Like what I was getting was that like there's a lot of lessons that potentially are now getting like tied up and coming to an end. And the best thing about it is these might have been things that were presented to you, not to you, Dee, specifically, but to anybody listening. This is just a message for the collective that I'm getting. For the last like 4 or 5 years, there might be lessons that have continued to repeat themselves, and maybe they haven't shown up in a while, but they're going to show up soon. And the best part about it is you're going to look at it and say, wow, I would have reacted to this so differently before, but I want to celebrate you because there's a lot that you have learned, and you've come really, really far. And that's just a testament to the work that you're doing and to the commitment that you have for staying on your path. And so Spirit just wants you to know that if it's presented to you, take it as an opportunity of celebration instead of feeling like it's a setback, because it really is something that is showing you that this next level is coming and this transition is happening, and this transition doesn't feel so hard like it has been in the past. So that's exciting.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yes, celebration, celebrating yourself for how far you've come. It's so beautiful. So, Chelsea, where can everyone find you? And I'll
Yes.
actually also put these in the show notes.
Okay, cool. So you can find me on Instagram at chelseajenkins.love. And in my bio, if you would like to book a psychic reading or a human design reading, I would be happy to sit with you and give you a little bit more insight on what your soul blueprint looks like.
Thank you so much. And she seriously firsthand, one of the most amazing psychics, human design readers ever, in my opinion.
I love you.
I love
It's
you.
my best friend.
Thank you so much for being my first guest on the Magic Exists podcast. And until next time.
I'm honored. Bye, guys. Love you.
Bye.